All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, everyone, today. We'll go ahead and get started. You are in the correct spot. We are talking about strengthening your overall security framework with MBA's new data encryption offering. Couple logistical things before we dive in. First of all, we've already got a question. Hey, are you guys recording? I've got so many things going on today. We get it. Most of us are former educators, and there's always something going on. So, yes, we are 100% recording. We will be sending this to you in the next day or so, as well as we always put these into our monthly newsletters. But rest assured, you will get the recording. If sometimes you get someone come by, knock on the door, you have to step away from your computer. We've got you covered as always. Also, feel free if you want, you can share this recording within your organization. If other folks would benefit from this, by all means, we trust you. So feel free to share this within your school, your district, with folks who are also thinking about how to increase overall data security and your overall security framework. We've also got the Q&A open. So if you have questions, go ahead. Don't wait till the end. Go ahead and put your questions in just as they come to you. We had, I think, almost 100 people register for this webinar. So if there's a question we don't get to, we're certainly not ignoring you. We'll be following up with everyone who registers and who's attends to have conversations with you about data encryption. And we'll be sure to get to any questions we don't answer during the live webinar when we have a chance to have that one-on-one conversation, especially if it's specific to your data and your instance of PowerSchool SIS. And finally, you feel free to, like I said, to share this with others and to ask those questions and let us know how we can continue to help. So today we're going to be talking about strengthening your security framework. Everyone's got lots of components to how they make sure that they're protecting all the data that they're in charge of, not to mention training staff on phishing simulations and what not to click when it comes to emails and things like that. So this is really going to help become part of your overall security framework with data encryption. Now, I've got a team of great folks who are monitoring the Q&A. So as mentioned, feel free to put questions in. But I've also got some amazing speakers today who are going to really help put all of this together for us. We're going to have Sherry Schultes, who's our customer solution specialist, come in and here in a few minutes and actually do a walkthrough and show you what data encryption looks like for a sysadministrator, for someone who's in PowerSchool SIS. And then around the 15-20 minute mark, we're going to kind of pivot and have a conversation with Elizabeth Keller, who is our product quality analyst coordinator, who's really going to talk about some of the ways that we develop some best practice when it comes to this overall solution and how it can positively affect your school, your organization, and your district. But what I always like to start with is, maybe you're brand new to your district. A lot of people are new hires to their district. If you are and are new to a PowerSchool SIS district, MBA might be a new company for you, a new partner. So we always like to highlight to folks, hey, we didn't just start. We've been around for 40 years, continuing to help school districts get the most out of the software that they depend on every day, and that unmatched expertise, that relationship first approach where we listen to what you need as opposed to telling you what you need to implement. And then we also have proven results and with our solutions that folks rely on every single day in dozens of countries around the world. And so that's really MBA's commitment. And this was a big one for us, making sure that we're committed to making your data as secure as possible was a big undertaking that we really wanted to put into the hands of our partners, because that's really how we see the schools and districts that we have the honor of getting to partner with. And one of the things we heard was, hey, how can we continue to increase our security? Because there's a lot of data out there, and you get more and more data every single day. This is really going to be focusing specifically on your inactive student data, that data that's at rest, but that still can come under attack if there is a security incident. Because basically every single state, every single province has some level of requirement for maintaining student data long after the student transfers or graduates or moves away. And a lot of them leave it up to the district. Some states and provinces do it, but a lot say the LEA, the local educational agency, the district, the board, is who has to maintain those records. And so when you have 10, 15, 20 years of student records, how can you keep that safe? Because cybersecurity incidents are on the rise. We certainly went through a lot of that in 2025, with over half of US school districts experiencing a cybersecurity incident. And that's continuing to be on the rise, up 31% year over year in 2025 compared to 2024. So, how can we minimize the fallout of those types of incidents by making sure that the 10, 15, 20 years of inactive student data that you have isn't caught up and isn't part of what's accessed if there is a security incident? Um, so Sherry, I think that really kind of establishes the need. No brainer for a lot of educators. Security and elevating security is a need. But I would love to kind of hand it over to you to hear a little bit about the benefits, and then also just to jump right in and see it in action. So Sherry, I'll let you take it away, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Again, everyone, thank you for joining our webinar today. It is an honor to talk to you about a helpful tool to secure data within PowerSchool. As Sam stated, MBA is always working to help schools by providing plugin and services. The MBA plugin development team has created a helpful tool to secure your data within PowerSchool, and we'd like to give them a special thanks today as we get started. The new Data Encryption Plugin is designed to help securely encrypt critical student information within the PowerSchool database. This powerful tool uses industry standard AES encryption in a self-contained secure environment, ensuring sensitive data remains protected at all times. On the screen, you're seeing key benefits of the plugin. The key benefits include sensitive data never leaves your PowerSchool environment. This ensures inactive student information remains fully contained within your system, reducing exposure risk, eliminating reliance on external tools or data transfers. Another benefit is secure retention of records for graduated, inactive, and transferred students. Schools and districts can retain required historical student data while encrypting it to prevent unnecessary access, supporting compliance without increasing your risk. And finally, full control with fast password based encryption. Technology teams stay in control by quickly encrypting student data using secure passwords, allowing sensitive data information to be protected on demand without daily interruptions, without disrupting daily interruptions. Okay, at this time, I'm going to head into PowerSchool and we're going to talk about the data encryption plugin. I'm going to go ahead and drop my video, and Sam will go ahead and share my screen here. And Sam, you can see my PowerSchool screen. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, again, thank you for your time today. The data encryption plugin, as we head into the data encryption plugin, it is important to note that you need a selected group of students as you come into the data encryption plugin. This plugin does not have group securities similar that our other plugins may have. The plugin uses page permissions. As we choose system data, we now see the data encryption plugin in this area. So we can encrypt data, decrypt data, and of course, you can always change and update your password. As we come to our data encryption tool, the first step in the data encryption tool process is an introduction page. This introduction page is going to tell you a little bit about our data encryption plugin. I would just highlight again that this is a highly secure encryption. The data encryption plugin uses AES encryption, a well-established and highly secure algorithm to ensure that data is encrypted safely. We then share steps, key features and functionalities, and how to get started. As we choose the next page, our disclaimers are on the next page. I would highlight our disclaimer of you maintain and store the password. You are in complete control of the password. The data encryption plugin is yours to set the password for, and you will maintain the password. The password is not maintained within PowerSchool, nor does MBA maintain that password. So an important disclaimer that that is your password. If I had not set up the plugin previously, which I have, I already have my password set up. At this point, you would set up your password in this area. MBA will provide you with suggestions for passwords, such as the length as well as numeric and character specific items for your password. And then you would list who are your trusted people with the password. It is our suggestion that you have at least a couple people, maybe 3 people that have that password within your district. Again, you will maintain and control that password. So you have the opportunity to list who has control of the password, as well as their email and the phone number if you'd like to. The additional backup control is essentially a password hint. What would you need to know to remember that password? So you can provide that hint or that safety, that specific password. The next setting is called the record preservation setting. This setting is to prevent records from being encrypted. So you're indicating how many school years of data that you would like to keep unencrypted. So this tool will encrypt students with three different enrollment statuses. Those enrollment statuses include transferred out, graduated, and inactive. Um, those three enrollment statuses in combination with this record preservation safeguard will determine if the student is eligible for encryption. The record preservation safeguard is in place to determine the number of years of a student record base in your database based on the student's exit date that you would like to keep preserved or unencrypted. So for instance, right now I have mine set to 1. So this would not include this current school year, but it would look for exit dates outside of the last year. So another example, for instance, if your state requires 7 years worth of data to be active, you may put 7 into this record safeguard preservation safeguard setting. Then note that the 7 years prior to that current record does not include the current record, but any student with an exit date outside of those 7 years and with one of our 3 enrollment statuses would be eligible for encryption. If they're 3 statuses, but their exit date falls within those 7 years, they will not be encrypted. So they are protected. So it is a record preservation safeguard setting. Again, we're looking at 3 different enrollment statuses for students, as well as our record preservation safeguard. The next step is to set the fields that you would like to be encrypted. So as we set our fields, notice we have the student table and extended student table fields. These are one-to-one fields. And as the data encryption plugin works, it will take the field values out, the original values out of the field, place them into an extended table as an encrypted string that requires the password to unlock it. So we'll take the field data out. We can set global defaults, such as for the string, I've set it to encrypted, and a date I set for today's encryption date. But then I simply choose which fields I'd like to encrypt. For the email field, we have a validation in our email field. So that we have added to comply with our validation, encrypted at mba-link.com will be placed in the field as the data is encrypted from those fields. So I simply choose which fields I would like to encrypt. Notice I have additional fields that I can choose from, and then I can go ahead and begin to work on the encryption. So we'll go ahead and save these values. As we come to the encryption portion of the tool, we will see the encryption. We'll hit next, I guess, and then we'll see our encryption here. So it's pulling in the 16 kids that I have selected. I did search for those kids based on their exit dates, and I'm looking to encrypt the data. So here are my students. As I'm looking at the students, notice the encryption tool is indicating, due to our record preservation setting, that this student has an exit date that falls within the range that we keep it active and not encrypt. So it's saying exit date is too recent. And notice also for Brennan, he is an active student and it's indicating that active student. So at this time, I place my secure password into our password area here, and we'll go ahead and save. As the tool begins to work, we're going to see the encryption status change. You're seeing my Bitwarden pull up there, but we're seeing the encryption status change and data is moving from the fields. The original values, they're being stored into an extended table as an encrypted string as the encryption plugin is working. Notice it did bypass the student with an exit date that is too recent. You're going to also see it bypass the student that is an active student. So this is a great way for schools to protect inactive student personal identifiable information, ensuring sensitive data is secure against unauthorized access while remaining available to appropriate or approved users. So the encryption plugin has completed. As we choose next for the encryption plugin, we have the opportunity to go to our start page. So at this point, you might be wondering, what does the student record look like as we come to the student record? So these are the students that I have just encrypted the data for. As I come to Julie Adams, you'll notice the record has a salmon color around it. So this is indicating that this record has been encrypted and is locked um, for the user. So if I try to update a field, there is no submit button to update the field. The record is locked. Also notice in the address area, the default setting of encrypted has been placed. I did not ask to encrypt the state data, so that remained intact. But we see the zip code is also been encrypted. The home phone number has the default value in the field, and the data is encrypted. If you go to any of the pages, you will see the salmon color. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I unencrypt data if I have a student that perhaps I choose not to have the data encrypt, or maybe I need to activate the record so that I can re-enroll the student. I can decrypt the record in this area by choosing decrypt. We also see the data encryption tool along the bottom under more. As I choose data encryption tool, I have the opportunity to decrypt the data. Um, it is indicating which fields have been encrypted. And so I can go ahead and say I want to decrypt. If I decrypt the fields, it is requiring the password. So I can go ahead and view the results. As we look at the specific fields, we see our field, the encrypted value, as well as the decrypted original value. If I would like to place a new value within the field, I can update the new value and use the current value. Or if I would like to take all of the fields and decrypt the fields, I simply come to the bottom of the page and choose to complete the decryption. As we decrypt the fields, the record becomes active. The fields are replaced with the original values. So we'll come back over to the student demographic page and we'll see for Julie that all of her fields have been placed back in. The record no longer has the salmon color, indicating that it is an active record, and the student can be transferred back into your district, and all of the information has been retained. So we're going to come to our next student here. And instead of decrypting the data, we might have the need to go ahead and override the encryption process. So if we do override the encryption process, an example of this may be that this student was transferred out, left us when they were a kindergarten student, and perhaps they're back in our district now and they're entering into our district as a freshman. And so we have a number of years in which perhaps that encrypted data is no longer valid. So we just need to be able to override the encryption process and add information into the field. So to do this, as the student is returning to you and you no longer care about the encrypted information, we can bypass the system and we'll go ahead and add a reason. Um, we'll just say that this is an active student and we'll go ahead and hit submit. It does ask you, are you sure you want to bypass the encryption? And we'll go ahead and say yes. At this point, the encrypted data remains in the field, but it activates the record and you're able to add um, updated information. So as I come to our demographics page, I now see the data from the encryption, but I can go ahead and fill in the new student home address, city, state, zip code. The record is active and ready to use again. So that is our override process for the encryption plugin. You can decrypt the student at each student level. Again, indicated by our salmon color, the record is locked and encrypted, and we can use our decryption here. We can also mass decrypt for our students. So as we come back to our homepage and we choose system, data, and decrypt data, I still have my group of selected students. And at this point, I can use my decryption password or encryption password to decrypt the data. So I can go ahead and place that password within. I can decrypt specific students, or I can decrypt the entire mass decrypt the entire batch at one time. So I'm going to go ahead and say mass decrypt. We'll see that status start to change as the plugin is working to decrypt all of the data and replace it back with the original values. Again, this is a uh, we apply a strong AES encryption within a fully self-contained PowerSchool environment, eliminating the need for any external tools while maintaining performance, control, and governance. So now we've completed, and each of the data for the student is no longer encrypted. It's active records ready to be used or reactivated in PowerSchool. And we've completed that mass decrypt process. Another item that we can choose to do in our in data encryption plugin is to actually change or update the password. This may happen in the instance in which the staff that had the original password are no longer with the district, and you need to secure down your data again by updating that password. So as you choose to do this, you would be asked for your old password. You would update your new password. As I choose change password, you would also add your new password one more time. This is going to unencrypt data with the old password and re-encrypt the data with the new and password. So it's going to do that on your behalf so that your data remains secure. As we come to our data encryption plugin, the data encryption plugin enables teams to securely protect sensitive student data directly within PowerSchool without introducing new systems and disrupting operations by encrypting records for graduated, inactive, and transferred out students. Teams reduce exposure risk while maintaining compliance and control using existing permissions. The result is stronger data governance, improve security posture, and confidence that your student personal information is protected by design, not by process. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll turn it back over to Sam and Elizabeth.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sherry. Always learn something from you. I really like the flexibility of the tool you shared. You know, you're working with one student, some students, all students, a ton of flexibility in how you can really interact and protect that data. And as a parent of a rising 11th grader, it sure would be nice knowing that that was in place when she goes off to college to work and not something we have to worry about, you know, years from now. Um, I want to bring you in now and just have a conversation with you. But first of all, I'd love to get you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do at MBA, how long you've been here, stuff like that, before we jump into our questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. It's a pleasure being here. I have been with MBA for about 5 years, and I work one on one with the development team. I oversee our QA team, and we are constantly working with them on developing new features and products as well as, doing internal testing. So it's always a good time.
No, and we're glad to have you at the helm there, you know, kind of leading some of these initiatives because yeah, you always want to stay ahead of things, but you also want to make sure you get it right and not fast and that it works. So the QA component
Absolutely.
is just huge. So yeah, I think that's a great kind of lead into our first question. You know, so what was the interaction that you had maybe with districts and why did MBA really design this plugin specifically around inactive students instead of just trying to say, you know what, we're just going to decrypt everything across the board? Or encrypt everything across the board, I guess I should say.
It's a great question. Data security is always at the forefront of everybody's minds. And why not active students? Well, MBA intentionally chose to encrypt only inactive student data due to state data retention and reporting requirements for active students. In addition, active student records must remain accessible for day-to-day internal operations, ongoing integrations, and operational dependencies involving third-party systems such as data warehouse, payment vendors, transportation grading platforms, and other potentially connected services.
Yeah, I can only imagine if all active students were encrypted that way. What Sherry just showed was great for the inactive students, but if you were doing that every single time the state needed something new, or you have your regular auto send type of connections to other API integrations, that certainly would create a lot of headache for you going in and doing it every single time. Um, and I noticed like one of the most interesting design choices is that separate encryption password. We'd love for you to explain a little bit about why that's intentionally different from, say, a user's normal PowerSchool login, and how that kind of simplifies and solves problems for the district there.
Yeah, of course. So these are two separate credentials. Your PowerSchool login proves that you can access that system, while the encryption password proves that you are an authorized user to lock and unlock protected student data. This really provides clear separation of operational duties and institutional control over the staff that have access to the encryption and decryption processes.
So with MBA using, one organizational encryption password rather than those individual user keys. So if we think with a school or district leadership perspective, what are some of the governance benefits of that model that we've put into this solution?
Yeah, of course. So the district uses one organizational encryption password rather than allowing for individual user passwords. This ensures continuity, consistency, and just overall institutional control. Think of the encryption password as the key to a district-owned safe, very similar to a bank vault, not as your PowerSchool login. This provides district ownership of that protected student data.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the key things that we looked at too is that password isn't stored somewhere. But that also means it cannot be recovered. So based on your experience in kind of QAing and rolling this out, I'd love to hear any best practices that you might recommend for districts that they can use to protect that key without creating more operational risk for themselves.
Yeah, of course. It's very important to remember that this encryption password is never stored in PowerSchool. But this also, on the flip side, helps prevent unauthorized access if accounts or databases are ever compromised. So if the password were stored inside the database, anyone with database access, or if there were a serious security breach, they could potentially unlock all encrypted student data without accountability. So it is really recommended to have a minimum of 2 trusted password sources that would have access to that MBA data encryption password. Provide a detailed password hint and ensure that the trusted source's contact information is kept up to date. For those trusted password sources, remember to share the password with the other trusted sources if the password is ever changed.
No, I think that it definitely keeps things kind of safe. You don't have one single point of failure, and is definitely the right idea without just having it. Certainly don't write it down and put it on a post-it note or anything like that. And then when we're thinking about what value to encrypt, I think Sherry did a really good job showing all the different fields. But maybe you don't want to encrypt every single field. How should districts really think about which fields are maybe higher priority or the highest priority candidates for potential encryption and protection?
Yeah, I think first we have to remember that every district and state, province may have different requirements as far as what needs to stay accessible for student data and how long it needs to stay accessible. That being said, think general first. What are the student fields that would be crucial to remain private and protected in the case of a security breach? What student data puts the district at a higher risk? Also, keep in mind these answers may differ based on the status of the student. For example, what may be encrypted for a graduated student could be very different from what is encrypted on a transferred out student that could potentially re-enroll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a great point. Yeah, really, not all data is created equally. Maybe if I had a computer number 17, not important. My home address and phone number, very important. So I think and of course, following what the state or the province is mandating in terms of what you need to protect as well is going to be key for what you maintain. So I think last question before we jump to some open Q&A. So don't go anywhere, and you neither, Sherry, because I think there's some good questions that we want to answer live. But so if a district or a board is thinking about this plugin, what would you say is the biggest maybe long-term value? Is it stronger privacy protection? Is it reduced exposure in the event of a breach? Is it better control over maybe who can access historical student data? What are we thinking of in terms of the biggest long-term value there?
Yeah, I think honestly, Sam, you just listed all of them. So this plugin overall just increases the district's control over sensitive student data, historical student data. It allows districts to protect that data within PowerSchool. It provides accountability over who has access to their student data, including staff and vendors, or if there were ever a security breach. So really, like I said, I think you nailed all of the key points.
Yep. I love that answer D, all of the above.
Mhm.
Perfect. Well, excellent. Well, let's jump into the Q&A. But before I do, people are always thinking about security. So I do want to do a quick plug. We have an amazing team coming together in Wisconsin this November 9th through 12th at the MBA Academy PowerSchool Conference. And the focus there is on security and data integrity. So always like to remind folks, hey, if you're looking for ways to continue this conversation and continue staying not just one step, but multiple steps ahead of those threats out there, this is a great opportunity for you. And of course, we promote this within our regular newsletter as well. And you can always go to mba-link.com/conferences in order to get more information and even to register. And we have early bird pricing going on through mid-July. So the first question I'm going to take, because there was, I think a lot of folks are thinking, hey, could I get this ready for back to school? And the answer, we double checked this ahead of time, is yes. We have kickoff, we have implementation training, we have one-on-one meetings with you throughout that process. But it is about a 30-day implementation process. So whether you're thinking about end of year funds that you have to use before June 30, or maybe New Year funds that open up on July 1st for you. Either way, that 30-day kind of implementation process could allow you to get this up, running ahead of back to school. So I wanted to cover that initially. This one came in, and I mentioned I would answer it live, and I'm going to lean on you a little bit, Elizabeth. Folks, not everyone's on the latest version of PowerSchool SIS. So any versioning requirements that folks should know, or maybe reasons not to take an upgrade? What pretty much what does this work well with?
Sure. So as far as the PowerSchool version is concerned, NBA follows the current supported versions defined by PowerSchool. And that's really the only requirement for us at this point.
Gotcha. So as long as PowerSchool listed as a supported version, will be, and they're on that, you'll be good to go, which is really best practice as well for security. Sherry, I'm gonna lean on you for this next one. I think people are thinking, well, I don't want to make it harder for staff to access records when they do indeed need them. So just to put an exclamation point on that question, do we feel like this is going to make it harder for staff to access records when those requests come in to access and provide those records to an approved requester?
So at the student level, you do have the override option, and you can go ahead and override the record, and then that record will become a record that you can go ahead and work with again. So that override function helps ease that burden for the districts. At that point, you can reactivate the student, enroll the student back in, and add information back in for the student, add new current information.
I got you. Perfect. And I think that sets up maybe my next to last question I saw pop up. And I'm going to go back to you, Elizabeth. So Sherry mentioned re-enrolling. Would wonder, how does this work with students that are re-enrolling, especially if we want to avoid having duplicate student records? How would this kind of factor into a situation where you were trying to not get into a deduping workflow down the line?
Yeah, of course. So if we go back to that initial encryption process, now remember you have your option to pick which student fields. And again, these are all one-to-one student fields. I can't stress that enough. They're one-to-one student fields that you're going to be picking from before you actually encrypt the student record. Now, if a student is transferred out, the district may want to consider which one of those fields to actually encrypt. PowerSchool detects duplicate students based on a number of fields, some of which include the date of birth, social security number, and gender. So encrypting those fields for transferred out students may impact that duplicate student detection. So when encrypting fields for transferred out students specifically, districts may want to consider the actual year of graduation of that student and then decide which student fields to encrypt based on that year of graduation and potential re-enrollment of the student.
Gotcha. No, and I think that's a great call out, and definitely can save you some headache kind of down the line when all of a sudden you realize, oh no, we've got those two students, but it's not two students, it's really one. And then this last one, I will say this last one came up in a conversation we had with a district a week or two ago. They were looking at this and they were like, well, is this the same as BitLocker, which is a Microsoft offering? And so the answer is no. Both of those things can be part of your larger framework when it comes to human firewall and helping people understand about phishing. Well, BitLocker is really good for devices, servers, tablets, computers, things like that. This is really inside of that firewall. So I think the data encryption component really helps protect your data once someone's in the system, whereas BitLocker helps keep the people from getting into the hardware in the first place. So both can be great components of your overall comprehensive security framework that is always evolving. So I'm not seeing any other questions come in that we'll be answering live, but just a real quick thank you to Elizabeth. Thank you to Sherry. Thank you to the great team of folks that were answering Q&A within the chat, because I saw that was really busy as we were going through our content today as well. But most of all, thank you to the folks that signed up for this webinar. As mentioned, I think we had right at about 100 folks sign up. So whether you're attending live right now or whether you're watching this on demand, we just appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. We will be following up to see what additional questions you have. But in the meantime, please always feel free to reach out to your contacts at MBA, to your customer solution specialists like Sherry and other folks. And we look forward to seeing what you think and continue to have that relationship first approach where we're hearing what your questions are and using that to really plan out our next level of up-leveling the software that we put in the hands of you, your administrators, your families, your students, et cetera. So for now, I'll let you guys go. Thanks so much. Have a great summer. And we look forward to chatting with you on our next webinar series coming up in July, where we'll be taking a look at MB Assist and then also looking at how you can tackle chronic absenteeism to increase student progress while maximizing funding for your school, your district, and your board. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.